There's a difference between believing something and realizing there's evidence for it. What if I told you the life of Jesus was predicted hundreds of years before he was even born? I researched and found out that his birth and crucifixion were documented in prophecy centuries earlier, and it gave my faith a foundation. People will say Christianity is just another religion, that Jesus was just a teacher, or that the story was made up over time. But then I started looking at something I had never really studied before: prophecy. Not predictions written after the fact, but predictions written centuries before Jesus was born. This forces an uncomfortable question. How could multiple authors across hundreds of years accurately describe one specific person before he was born? There are really only a few possibilities: coincidence, fabrication, or divine inspiration. And when you really examine the evidence, divine inspiration becomes difficult to dismiss. And that's where things got interesting. Before we look at prophecy, we have to ask one question. Were these texts written before Jesus? The Dead Sea Scrolls contain copies of Isaiah dated more than 100 years before Christ. That means that the prophecies already existed before the New Testament was even written. So then the New Testament writers couldn't have copied the prophecies after the fact. This isn't theology. This is archaeology. Now listen to this. This is written around 200 BC in the book of Micah, chapter 5, verse 2. But as for you, Bethlehem, Ephrathah, too little to be among the clans of Judah, from you one will come forth for me to be ruler in Israel. His times of coming forth are from long ago, from the days of eternity. Now fast forward 200 years. The book of Matthew, chapter 2, verse 1, it says, Now after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea. Micah named Bethlehem 700 years before Jesus. Jesus' parents lived in Nazareth. They didn't choose Bethlehem. A Roman census forced them there. What looked like politics was prophecy unfolding. Now, what are the odds of this happening? I'm going to go over the odds a little later. Now check this out. This was written about 1000 BC in the book of Psalm 22:16. It says, They pierced my hands and my feet. Now fast forward 1,000 years. In the book of John, chapter 20, verse 27 through 28, it says, Then he said to Thomas, Place your finger here and see my hands, and take your hand and put it into my side, and do not continue in disbelief, but be a believer. Thomas answered and said to him, My Lord and my God. Crucifixion, as practiced by the Romans, did not exist yet, and yet it described pierced hands. John records the nail wounds, written 1,000 years earlier. Now here's another one. In Psalm 22:18 it says, They divide my garments among them, and for my clothing they cast lots. Now fast forward 1,000 years, the book of Matthew chapter 27 verse 35 it says, And when they had crucified him, they divided his garments among themselves by casting lots. And another one. Here in Isaiah 53:9 it says, And his grave was assigned with wicked men, yet he was with a rich man in his death, because he had done no violence, nor was there any deceit in his mouth. Now, fast forward 700 years, in the book of Matthew, chapter 27, verse 57 to 60, it says, Now when it was evening, a rich man from Arimathea came, named Joseph, who himself had also become a disciple of Jesus. This man went to Pilate and asked for the body of Jesus. Then Pilate ordered it to be given to him. And Joseph took the body and wrapped it in a clean linen cloth and laid it in his own new tomb, which he had cut out from in the rock. And he rolled a large stone against the entrance of the tomb and went away. Crucified like a criminal, buried like a king, prophesied 700 years earlier. This is when it stopped becoming theoretical for me. Psalm 16:10 said, "You will not allow your Holy One to see decay." Matthew 28:6 says, "He is risen." This is what investigators call converging evidence. Independent authors, different centuries, one person. Now, I said earlier that I was going to talk about the odds of several Messianic prophecies being fulfilled by one person. There was a book called Science Speaks, written by Peter W. Stoner. It was first published in 1958. He said the probabilities of just 8 specific prophecies being fulfilled by one person is 1 in 10 to the 17th power. Right? That's 100 quadrillion. The illustration he used was to help visualize the probability. Stoner gave an analogy. Imagine covering the entire state of Texas with silver dollars 2 feet deep. Then mark one coin, mix all the coins, blindfold a person, let them pick one coin. The chances they pick the mark one is about 1 in 10 to the 17th power. Okay, that's pretty impossible, right? So now Stoner estimated the probability of all 48 prophecies being fulfilled by one person as 1 in 10 to the 157th power. That number is astronomically large. For comparison, scientists estimate the number of atoms in the observable universe at around 10 to the 80th power. Jesus wasn't random. He wasn't an afterthought. He wasn't just a teacher who appeared suddenly in history. He was the fulfillment of a plan, written centuries before he arrived. God wasn't reacting. He was revealing. And when I saw that, I realized they already knew. This didn't make my faith emotional. It made it grounded, because the evidence was already there, preserved, documented, waiting to be examined. I'm not asking anyone to believe blindly. I'm just encouraging you to examine it. Look at the prophecies. Look at the timeline. Look at the evidence. Because the deeper I looked, the harder it became to dismiss, and the stronger my faith became. Thank you for watching The Honest Christian. Next week I'm going to talk about why did the apostles die for this? Why would the apostles die for a lie? So I'm going to explore that next Sunday, 7 o'clock. Hope you like and subscribe. Hit that notification bell. Drop a comment. Ask questions or whatnot. And hope you're going to tune in next week. Right. Thanks. God bless. Bye.